Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez had been assigned to the 47th Fighter Squadron for 3 months, and in that time she'd spoken maybe 100 words. While other pilots filled the ready room with stories of near misses and daring maneuvers, Emma sat in the corner with her flight manuals, her voice barely above a whisper when forced to respond. The other airmen had given her a nickname that stuck like glue, the Mouse. They didn't say it to be cruel, at least not all of them, but the message was clear. In a world where confidence was currency, Emma seemed bankrupt, but on one storm-ravaged night, this quiet girl would do something that would silence every doubt and rewrite every assumption. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been dismissed because you didn't fit the mold, stay with me. Captain Jake Hawkeye Morrison was the squadron's golden boy, a third-generation pilot whose swagger matched his skill. He'd taken Emma under his wing initially, but his patience had worn thin. During briefings, he'd roll his eyes when she stammered through responses. In the cockpit simulators, he'd sigh loudly when she took too long to make decisions. "You fly like you're apologizing for being in the air," he told her once, and the ready room erupted in laughter. Emma had simply nodded and returned to her manuals, her cheeks burning red. The other pilots weren't much better. Sarah Viper Chan, one of only 3 women in the squadron, avoided Emma entirely, worried that association would taint her own hard-earned reputation. The younger pilots mimicked Emma's soft voice during poker games, turning her careful speech patterns into entertainment. Even the ground crew exchanged knowing looks when she approached, as if wondering how someone so timid had made it through flight school at all. Then came the night of November 15th. A Category 4 hurricane was tearing up the coast, and the squadron had been grounded for hours. But at 2200 hours, the call came in. A cargo ship was sinking 200 miles offshore, 37 crew members clinging to life rafts in 40-foot swells. The Coast Guard helicopters couldn't reach them in the storm. They needed someone to fly reconnaissance, to guide the rescue ships through the chaos, to be their eyes in the darkness. Every pilot in the ready room knew what that mission meant. Flying through hurricane winds in pitch blackness, with zero margin for error and equipment pushed beyond its limits. It was a suicide run dressed up as a rescue mission. Hawkeye, who'd never backed down from a challenge in his life, looked at the weather radar and shook his head. "Nobody can fly through that," he said, and for once, no one disagreed. The squadron commander was about to scrub the mission when a voice cut through the room. "I can do it." Emma stood up, her flight suit already zipped, her helmet under her arm. The ready room went silent. Then someone laughed. Then another. Hawkeye stepped forward, his face a mixture of concern and condescension. "Mouse, this isn't a simulation. This is real weather that will tear your aircraft apart. Sit down." But Emma didn't sit. She walked to the commander and repeated, quieter but somehow stronger, "Sir, I can do it. I know I can." And here's where the story takes a turn that'll leave you speechless. Drop a like if you're still watching, because you need to hear what happens next. The commander saw something in her eyes that made him hesitate, then nod. 5 minutes later, Emma was strapped into an F-18, the canopy closing over her like a coffin lid. The other pilots gathered in the tower, watching the radar as her aircraft lifted into the screaming darkness. Hawkeye stood at the front, his jaw tight, already regretting not stopping her. The tower communications crackled with static as Emma's plane disappeared into the storm. What happened over the next 90 minutes became the stuff of legend. Emma flew through conditions that would have shredded most pilots' nerves, navigating by instruments alone through winds that tossed her aircraft like a toy. She didn't radio in with panicked updates or requests for guidance. She simply flew. Her voice calm and precise when she did communicate, guiding rescue vessels through the chaos with coordinates so accurate they seemed impossible. She found the life rafts in zero visibility, circled them until help arrived, then flew back through the hurricane without a single complaint or moment of hesitation. When Emma touched down 3 hours later, the entire squadron was waiting on the tarmac. Her aircraft had stress fractures in the wings, and the paint was stripped from the fuselage. She climbed out of the cockpit, her legs shaking, and pulled off her helmet. Hawkeye was the first to reach her, his eyes red-rimmed. "How? was all he could say. Emma looked at him with those same quiet eyes and finally let the truth out. "My little brother died in a storm," she said softly. "I was 15, we were sailing, and I froze. I couldn't move, couldn't think, and he drowned while I watched. I've spent every day since learning to fly, learning to navigate storms, learning to be the person I couldn't be for him. You all saw shyness, I saw practice, you heard hesitation. I heard preparation. Every night I flew those simulators after you all left. Every manual I read was another lesson learned. I'm not brave. I'm just someone who refuses to freeze ever again." 37 people came home that night because the girl everyone called Mouse turned out to be a lion. Hawkeye never made another joke about her voice. Viper became her closest friend. The squadron stopped measuring courage by volume and started recognizing it in quieter forms. This story reminds us that the loudest voice in the room isn't always the strongest. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the one preparing for the moment when it matters most. Emma could have let the mockery break her. She could have transferred out, given up, or let their words define her. Instead, she honored her brother's memory by becoming the pilot he needed her to be, even if it came too late for him. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who's ever felt too quiet, too shy, too different. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who don't announce themselves until the moment demands everything they have. What are you preparing for in silence that the world doesn't see yet? Think about it, because one day your storm will come, and the only question that matters is whether you'll be ready to fly through it.